Welcome to part 3 of Bob Lazar's story about UFOs, UAPs, and aliens. If you haven't seen part 1, well, we'll leave a card above right now for you to click on. Or if you haven't seen part 2, we'll also leave a card above. Make sure you go check out both of those videos and then hop back over to part 3 here. Both of those videos will have links in the description. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Without further ado, let's continue.
You know, took the transcript out and were reading me what my wife and, you know, our friend were talking about. And I don't know, it was a hard time.
So what happens from there? What do they do with you? Why don't they arrest you?
I don't know. I don't know why. I'm not sure exactly they knew what to do, but they did let me go that night, and I went home. And this is kind of when the most stressful part started. Because
you're realizing that you're being monitored 24/7.
Now I know not only am I being monitored, but now I know I'm in trouble. And it wasn't a short time after that that I contacted, you know, at that time, the only investigative reporter I had heard of in Las Vegas was George Knapp. And, you know, told him some of the story because I had no idea what the hell was going to happen at that point.
So George Knapp tries to dissect your story, tries to find holes in it, tells it, puts it online, and makes everybody aware of it, and that's how I found out about it.
Yeah, to make a long story short. Yeah.
What happens, to really make a long story short, what happens from there on? I mean, do they contact you and say, hey, Bob, it's probably a good idea if you shut up?
Oh,
did they try to label you as crazy? Was there...
There were a lot of things that happened at, you know, between that point. I'm leaving out a lot of stuff to fill in the story. We'd have to go back to Los Alamos and well, I really don't want to talk about that. The
top secret weapons stuff that you were working on.
No, I'm talking about the 115.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know. I have to think about how I'd...
What is the problem with this?
I don't want to get myself into more trouble by admitting something. So I just have to dance around.
Okay, so to kind of fill you in and explain what's happening at this present moment in time is there is a rumor out there that Bob Lazar, before he left this whole alien UFO thing, is that he actually took some of this element 115, recorded it, ran experiments on it, has video of it. Again, rumor is that he actually has this element 115. So when him saying, well, I don't want to get myself more in trouble, or maybe he doesn't want to expose the fact that he has this stuff, not the fake, like synthetic version, like the real stuff from the craft. So that's kind of what he's referring to here. Let's see if he actually kind of explains a little bit of what's going on.
Around a couple.
He was rated just during the filming of the movie. People thought it was
the movie's great, by the way.
Thanks, Joe.
And it's on Netflix right now if anybody wants to check it out. And if you're one of those people like me who, you know, I've always loved the idea of UFOs. I became extremely weary talking to people who are UFO believers and UFO fanatics because there's so many of them that are full of shit. And not just full of shit, they're childishly delirious. Like the way they talk about things. I mean, there's so many people that I'm in contact. They reach me in the night and they explain to me what we're doing to the ocean is wrong. And like, you're like, okay.
This is one of the reasons I didn't want to do the show.
I'm sure.
Well, no, it's no, yeah, well, it's no joke. We've had people literally camp out on our front lawn and, you know, in some ways I can relate to some of these people. You know, maybe some of them did really have some kind of experience or saw something and all their friends think they're crazy. But hey, now there's this guy I heard on the radio and at least he knows I'm not full of shit. So I got to talk to him.
Right.
And so most of the correspondence I get are people trying to get a hold of me going, Bob, you got to listen to me. I'm coming to talk to you. I'm driving from Oklahoma or whatever. But some of them are just fucking batshit crazy, and they're frightening.
There's a lot of schizophrenics that are involved in the conspiracy world. There's a lot of people that have real issues.
Joe, it would be a disservice to your audience to not...
Look, I've even had comments from people who watch Supernatural Saturday. Some of them are subscribers, some of them aren't. And, they're interesting comments, and I try to be respectful as possible. But at the same end, there's also some of those comments out there and people writing in it's pretty far stuff out there. Again, I try to be respectful, but it is true. There's a lot of people that, have certain things going on up here that maybe they really think that certain things did happen to them. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. But it is true. Some people are just generally scary. The way they push themselves, the way they come across. Not saying it's anybody watching this show necessarily, but there are some weird comments out there. And I'm just kind of getting credibility to what Bob Lazar says. The guy's probably heard from some crazy people, man.
Say that we have to look at what's going on now and understand. I've heard on your show a bunch of stuff about what's going on now, and to not really understand what's going on now, you can't see Bob's story in the correct light after 30 years. And at some point we should just touch upon that. The biggest being that things like the Tic Tac UFO case that came out, I've heard people even on the show say, oh, there's a glitch in the radar. That's a data poor perspective. You just don't know yet what's really going on. Commander Fravor, I was able to get the interview with him to talk with him way before it became public. I got that from him. He saw it. Other pilots saw it. This is a big thing that's going on right now. They had more sightings on the East Coast recently, cubes with spherical ores. These are not aerodynamic, and these are the people we trust to defend us on 9/11. Commander Fravor protected Los Angeles on 9/11. So we trust them, but they're not trained observers. Radar, individuals see these things, and the big one, just to throw down so we can consider a story a little differently, there's more depth to it. The big one is the United States government has admitted that they have been continuously studying the UFO phenomenon. That program was called ATIP, was called OSAP. That's the mother program. George Knapp got that out. They announced through the New York Times about ATIP, but OSAP, these acronyms, OSAP, Advanced Aerospace Weapon Systems Applications Program. Who cares? That was the mother program. So they've admitted we didn't stop studying UFOs in 1969 with Project Blue Book. We don't think it's crazy. We actually want to reverse engineer the technology. That's why on your other show, you said, what's this AAV thing? It's like they're making up another UFO name. Well, hold on. There's a reason. Because in the documents, the DIA documents that George Knapp released, that everybody said was fake till now they know is real, they call them AAVs, which is Advanced Aerospace Vehicles. People are getting the acronyms wrong. So the reason for the terminology change is so that we can mimic what we're reading in the DIA documents. People can look for that now. So they changed the names to get people away from UFO.
It's a really crafty way of doing things, and kind of just to bring us up to date on what's present time, because this happened quite a bit ago, this Jeremy Corbell and Bob Lazar interview with Joe Rogan, is the Pentagon just released a report basically talking about a mothership, or the possibility of a mothership being released into our solar system that's releasing these craft that is basically investigating surrounding planets, including ours. And also, he didn't mention this. He did mention the West Coast with the Tic Tac Commander Fravor, but also on the East Coast with the spheres and the cubes and stuff. To kind of go a little bit deeper, our military, specifically our aircraft, are engaging with these objects every week, you guys. This isn't from like conspiracy theories. This is from the military themselves, and the fighter pilots that are actually witnessing this. So it's not happening like once a year or once every 5 years. Every week off the coast of California, the West Coast in general, and also the East Coast, we are engaging craft that are visually able to be seen by our military, that is engaging with us, jamming our systems, which is an act of war, and I've mentioned that before, every single week, you guys. These aren't balloons, right? They're going 80,000 feet up and down. They're zigzagging back and forth. A balloon doesn't do that, folks. So we got to figure out what this stuff is. It's nuts, but let's let them continue here.
UFO or UAP, even like Hillary Clinton said on air, right? So
what are you talking about? Hillary Clinton said.
Hillary Clinton informed the public on Jimmy Kimmel, oh, Jimmy, we don't call them UFOs anymore. We call them UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon, right? So she kind of was giving, the Clintons are very into the UFO topic. Senator Reid, he's done a lot for the subject, the study of it, right? So she informed the public so they could look for the right term. So these terms are important because the DIA in those documents, they've been calling them AAVs for quite some time now.
And they changed the name to anomalous.
No, that's kind of a misnomer.
No?
So they always mess around with things, but it's actually advanced.
Right, but when they're
aerospace.
describing it in the news, they were calling it anomalous aerospace vehicles.
Totally. And that's cool. They were also saying anomalous aerospace threats, AAT, right? Because they want the sense of a threat.
Right.
So my point is, if people don't know this now and they think this stuff is fantasy, this part of it, that we're studying it, that we take it seriously, we're spending money on it, and that we're getting great data from visual pilots to radar. That's why we know it's aerospace. They dropped from 80,000 feet. But guess what? That's the top scope of the Spy 1 radar is 80,000 feet.
It's coming
So
higher.
the radar system they were using, it was coming from above that. So my point is this. If you don't understand that this is happening, you're just behind the curve because you don't have the information because of the stigma that you're talking about. I saw you get totally upset with the UFO topic. I met you first when you were totally upset with the UFO topic. It's the people.
When
you're doing your
pull this microphone.
I'm sorry, man. When you're doing your show, the Joe Rogan Questions Everything, I could see how frustrating it is. Trust me, I have been frustrated to hell. Luckily, my mentor is George Knapp, and he's taught me the pitfalls as I went through it. My whole point in this rant right here is just that we have to now look at Bob's story, but knowing the facts, not someone saying it's a bird, it's a plane, it's a glitch. They're not. And so if you don't know that, you just don't have the information yet.
Well, not just that, knowing the facts as we know them in 2019, not in 1988.
I find it interesting, not saying that Joe Rogan gave him pushback there, but he questioned him on the idea of when Jeremy Corbell said that Jeremy Rogan was kind of frustrated with the alien community, just aliens in general, UFOs. I've watched almost every single episode of Joe Rogan talking about UFOs, aliens, paranormal, all that stuff. He has mentioned that there was a time when he kind of dropped off on it. He was tired of it. There's a lot of BS. He's mentioned it in this podcast here, that there's a lot of people just sounding the alarm on stuff that's totally fake and not even real. So I thought it was kind of interesting there that he was giving him a little bit of pushback when I don't think there was pushback necessary. I think it's very well known that Joe Rogan kind of fell off, not the deep end, but just kind of pulled himself away from the UFO kind of conversation because of all the nonsense that's out there about it.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
And so what has he said that has come true? He's totally unimpressed with it, right? What has he said that's come true? So I was like, Bob, they've announced gravity as a wave. You were right, man. You're vindicated. And he looks at me and he's like, well, if you think about it, Jeremy, I had like a 50-50 chance. He was not very impressed, right?
When did they announce gravity as a wave?
So they detected, in a sense, gravity waves. And that
Who is they?
You might know more. There's two black holes that were colliding, and that's how they were able to detect.
Yeah, somebody built, I don't know which group it was or what part of the government.
That's what Google's for.
Yeah. But they, built a gigantic gravity wave detector and pretty much detected
that there are such things as gravity waves.
First observation of gravitational waves. It says it was in 2016. Okay, the first observation of gravitational waves was made on 14th of September 2015, as announced by the LIGO and Virgo collaborators on the 11th of February 2016. Previously, gravitational waves had only been inferred indirectly via their effect on the timing of pulsars in binary star systems. Dun, dun, dun. The waveform, connected by both LIGO observatories, matched the predictions of general relativity for a gravitational wave emanating from the inward spiral and merger of a pair of black holes around 36 and 29 solar masses and the subsequent ring down of the single resulting black hole. Whoa.
Well,
he was
in the 80s, the predominant theory was gravity is produced by gravitons.
Okay.
Theoretical particles. But they're not. They're waves. They're not particles. And that's
so the thought is that the way we experience gravity, it's based on mass, which is why the moon, which is roughly 1/4 the size of the Earth, has 1/6 of the Earth's gravity. So there's some sort of a computation you can make based on mass.
Right. And remember, we can observe the effects of gravity, but we have no idea what it is. All we can do is observe it, and we can't make it. The only way you can make gravity is just put more mass together, and it's just a product of gravity. But if you have a...
That's interesting, though, because if it's predicated on waves, then that kind of does open up the theory that you would be able to create those waves depending on how much energy that you're able to utilize to do it, and basically create anti-gravity or gravity within itself. I'm curious to see if he's going to mention that, because that does open up the doorway for that. Not just necessarily the particle aspect of it that he was kind of referring to from the 80s, but even currently, if this theory is true that it's predicated on waves, then in theory, I know I keep repeating myself with using that word, but in theory, you should be able to actually create gravity.
Machine that makes gravity, you can pretty much do anything. You can affect time. You can have force fields. All that stuff that's in science fiction becomes reality if you have a machine that can make gravity. And what we worked on in the desert was a machine that makes gravity.
I love your analogy of dropping off a small nuclear reactor to the Victorian era. I love that analogy, because back then that was impossible. That was magic. What you're talking about here, the fact that they just discovered this 4 years ago, that this is a wave. And we're, as much as we know and as impressed as we are, as we should be, with how much more technologically advanced we are than every other creature on this planet, we're still in many ways in the adolescence of technological innovation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If even adolescence.
And when you're
just to throw in the whole AI, right? You have ChatGPT-4 that just came out. You got the Bing AI. You have the competition between all of these corporations wanting to come out with the next AI. I mean, you can have these AI theoretically work together almost in a way, but even if it was by itself utilizing the internet, I mean, can you imagine the exponential function that you're giving? We already have an exponential function in terms of technology, right, and information, but I mean, you're going to have like vertical function here where the amount of information that's being accumulated and the AI filling in the gaps that we don't know in terms of problem solving, maybe even for equations. I mean, this goes down to even maybe the God equation, or even looking at filling the gaps to figure out how many dimensions we have, because of the way that the calculation works on it. And I'm not doing justice in explaining this. This kind of comes from Michio Kaku, but they're able to kind of prove, and I'm probably getting the amount of dimensions wrong. I think mathematically we can prove that there's about 8 to 12 dimensions, something in there, but they're not really sure if that is obviously the case. I think they get up to like 5 or 6 or something like that. But the whole purpose of me bringing this up is AI can really fill in a lot of missing gaps of knowledge and areas for us and even expand upon it. We know that we can teach AI to learn. We've seen that from even doing video games like Dota, playing against the best players in the world, and at some point the best players in the world can't even beat it anymore. It's not even a competition for the AI. So we're going to see a lot of advancements, whether it's good or bad. We're going to see a lot of advancements here in the next 10 years, and I think it's going to happen dramatically.
Talking about this binary star system and Zeta Reticuli, and who knows how much longer these things have been around than us, who knows what their evolutionary cycle's been, who knows what, I mean, we might be talking about something that's 1 million years more advanced than us.
Yeah, it could easily be. Now, I'm not believe it or not, I'm not into UFOs. I don't follow stories or,
Even after your experiences?
No, I'm fascinated with the technology, and it irks me like every night I go to sleep that, that it was my own doing, essentially, that prevented me from continuing on in the project. I mean, it's that to be on that cutting edge of technology is so alluring to me.
Right.
But, by the same token, I don't really care that there's aliens or where they come from. I mean, the prize is the technology, and that's what I'm fascinated by. But so I don't listen to UFO stories and that sort of thing. But George Knapp is, he's the guy that has the contacts and tries to thread everything together. And what he recently told me is he found, I don't know, it was either documentation or people that he spoke to. It's that the existence of this project, the project that I was on, it's something that they seem to take out every 8 or 10 years.
So that's a very specific memo, and this is actually, this is the first time I'll be very clear with people about it. It's a big topic of conversation right now. It's called the Wilson Memo. You can look it up. Admiral Wilson met with a scientist who's actually was featured in one of my films. Everybody has been debating whether or not this document of a conversation with a sitting admiral at the time is a real document. It's an actual conversation that happened, and this document is real. Everybody wants to know. The world is going crazy right now in the UFO world. I'll tell you straight up right now, I'm in the position to know, and it is a real document, that it is real. So the conversation you read in that, that conversation was had. I can't attest to every...
You're not being very clear.
Sure.
Please.
No problem. So there was a document that is circulating right now that is really big. It's going around everywhere. People are asking and wondering.
What is this document?
It's called the Wilson Memo, is how you can find it online, or the Wilson Leak.
There it is. Jimmy's got it. The Wilson Memorandum. Use of human volunteers.
No.
Make sure that was it. Yeah.
No, that's not it.
Okay.
Yeah. So Admiral Wilson meets with this scientist, and they have this discussion, oddly enough, at special projects at EG&G. And if I remember, the document is from 2001. I'm telling everybody right now, it's real. And we'll see. My history is pretty good with like saying if something's real or not, right? So here we go. The document comes out. They meet at EG&G Special Projects. In 1989, they stumble into a problem. This happens. They put the technology away, and then they bring it back out and see if material science has caught up and if they can make any progress. So this document kind of talks about this process. The big thing I get from it, and a lot of it's vindicating to Bob, and one of the things it's vindicating, besides the EG&G thing, is that private industry, so this guy's an admiral, and he says, I found out about your SAP, your Special Access Program. I need to know about it. And he's going to a private part of industry, and he is denied access. And he says, I should be running this program. And they were able to deny him access. So I think the takeaway here is, check it out. I'm telling you that is an actual correct, that is a leak. Now, everything said in that document, I don't know.
What are you talking about? What is said in that document?
Okay, so I love Jeremy Corbell, but if you're going to talk about something specific, say, like this Wilson memo, what was it? Who was it between? When did it take place? What was the introduction? What was the context of it? And give like specifics. I mean, he's saying that it's real. Look, we get it. You believe that it's real. Maybe it is real. You know, it's a leak. We fully understand that, man. We just need the information of what's in it, which is Joe Rogan trying to pull out of you. So we'll see if he answers it here. But it seems obviously like it's between an admiral. Between the admiral and who? I don't know. Is it the private sector of what she was just talking about? What is it, the EEG or EGG or whatever it may be? Let's see if he'll just answer it.
It's between a scientist and an admiral that are sitting, and they're having a meeting, and they're talking about the search for the UFO subject, the search to get Special Access Program access to all of these different things like reverse engineering programs. So in this document, they talk about it. I believe that this document, the person that went was employed by Robert Bigelow, one of the guys that has a couple of orbiting satellites and all that stuff.
Robert Bigelow also had the Skinwalker Ranch, supposedly saw UFOs, portals, cattle mutilation, orbs flying around, paranormal activity. I mean, all sorts of stuff. There is a television show called Skinwalker Ranch where you have people still performing experiments. Is it real? I don't know. A lot of the stuff he wouldn't come out and actually give. Even the new owner of Skinwalker Ranch is performing all these experiments that does believe in this stuff, that claims to see UFOs and all this stuff. Bigelow basically didn't even give him any of the stuff that he found and researched during his time of actually owning the ranch. So I got my qualms with Bigelow. I don't know if a lot of the stuff he saw there was real or not, but who knows?
He's the guy who owns Skinwalker Ranch.
No, he's not. No? He was the guy that owns Skinwalker.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he used to own it. There's a new owner, and I interviewed him for my other film, but there's a new owner, and you'll be hearing a lot more about that soon. But there's stuff that you'll be hearing about Skinwalker Ranch soon because there's a new owner. Anyway, the whole point of this insertion here is just that document kind of validates a lot of this idea Bob just said, that they make a little progress, then they can't go anywhere. They tuck it away, and then they bring it back out 10 years later and start working on it. What is the limiting factor? I think Bob should speak on this, but it's the material science.
It's really where physics is. So I can see them doing that. I mean, I didn't have any information on that, but I think what George uncovered is probably accurate. That we try and do what we can, and once we reach a roadblock going, we really can't figure it out. It's just friggin' put the thing away, wait for science to catch up, and a decade later, let's take the project out again and see, all right, now where can we go?
But there's got to be someone who remains informed, right?
Oh, yeah.
So you've got your scientists like you and Barry. You got your people that you compartmentalize. You got these people working on this
there
project.
has to be some people that know everything.
You've got security. and then someone's going to be on the outside saying, hey, we need people to guard this building. Don't let anybody in for 10 years.
I think a lot of that is private industry, and I think that's how they keep it. Yeah, I think that's how they because the government is just so leaky. I think that's kind of what they're doing.
That's what the document kind of proves. You just articulated that it is in control of private industry.
What private industry? Some aerospace company, something?
I don't know.
Yeah, the admiral wouldn't name it in the in the conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
So they still have these things, supposedly.
I would guess. I mean, I don't have any information on that.
Have you ever asked anyone that has any inkling of any idea of where they got them or how they got them?
No, but something must have been said to me from Barry. But it was just too long ago, and I can't quite remember what was said, but it just left a seed in my mind. I think at least one of them was part of an archaeological dig. So it's old. At least one of them is old. I don't know if it was the one I worked on, but I remember something to do with an archaeological dig.
Whoa.
So that means it's not just old, it's ancient.
That'd be a great Steven Spielberg movie.
Yeah, it would.
Right?
As all of it would, yeah.
Yeah, that tripped me out when he said that.
I mean, I guess Indiana Jones, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was basically that, right? I mean, there was an ancient, I don't know if it's Mayan or what, you guys remember, but alien spaceship. But there is rumors out there that in Egypt, there's a lot of the statues and relics that they found that they're not exposing to the public. And a lot of these relics, statues, inscriptions, portray aliens, like actual alien-looking faces. And supposedly there's a lot of them, and they're keeping it under wraps. Now, is that true? I have no idea. Just presenting you with what stuff I've read. But I guess Egyptologists and archaeologists are keeping that stuff under wraps. Again, don't know if it's true, but something for you to kind of dig into.
The first time.
Yeah, that's a freak out right there. Just a couple of dudes with some brushes looking for a Tyrannosaurus Rex bone. They hit metal.
And when did they find it? That they have 9 of them.
Yeah.
Well, and how could we have not heard about that? What about the guys with the brushes? How could you uncover something like that? And
Well, Joe's newspaper at home does. I mean, they said it on that first day.
Oh, you mean the Roswell Daily Record?
Yeah, the one you told me. Yeah,
I have a cover. What is this here, Jamie?
This is the document, but I had to do some digging to find it.
Yeah, it's just kind of, so this is where they meet at EG&G, and this is Admiral Wilson, and there's a lot more coming out. Now, I want to be clear, George didn't put this out. He didn't leak this out to anybody. This is, I can tell you how
Who recorded this?
Okay, so when I look at this, I see somebody basically making this on Word. Again, it very well could be real, but when I think of a memo, usually a memo has a letterhead. Maybe I'm wrong. For somebody in the military, maybe it say something that could be different, but this just looks like somebody could have created this on Microsoft Word. It doesn't do much for me looking at this now.
This conversation.
So this was an employee of, at the time, Robert Bigelow.
And this is in 2002?
Right. Do you remember when he had that government contract called OSAP the world all knows about now? And he had NIDS that studied the ranch. So that $22 million, everybody is saying it was for ATIP, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. The $22 million was for OSAP that was pushed through Congress, 3 congressmen, right? An astronaut. It was pushed through. And that's what that $22 million, by the way, they spend more money on Viagra every year than they do studying UFOs, if it was just this program, which I think is funny.
They probably make a lot more money from Viagra
they probably do
from UFOs, too.
Well, you never know how it seeds into population. But anyway, this program, this is what was the mother program. So it got the $22 million. And really, it was to study Skinwalker Ranch. Oddly enough, that $22 million all was inspired by the phenomenon they were seeing at Skinwalker Ranch, because the scientists, they're seeing vehicles come through like a space in the sky.
Yeah, we went there. I went there with Duncan.
Yeah,
we interviewed a bunch of people that seemed full of shit, but a couple that didn't. It was very, very interesting.
Totally. And if you look, I spent a lot of time in the area. I'm not talking about those stories. I'm saying there were scientists hired by the government, right, through Bigelow to study the ranch because they thought it was important. And, whatever. The point is that 22 million was to study that. Then we have ATIP, which is like an auxiliary kind of program of military sightings, like Commander Fravers and that sort of thing. This document is just one of those things that has now come forward that through the Bigelow studies, it was government funded, and then it was personally funded and then government funded. It's just one of those things that kind of shakes you because you got this military guy who can't get access because of the private industry that's holding these non-terrestrial materials, that they can't study it. So that's the claim right now. Give it some time, let people dig more into this. It's fascinating, man.
So you are essentially you're kicked out. Right, you're out of this program. You can't work with these crafts anymore. And do they give you any threats? Do they tell you what you have to do from here on out?
Yeah, well, I mean, the way it ended was I told George Knapp all this stuff, and he said, "Well, let's just get it on tape. Should something happen, at least we have a record of it." And I don't remember what the impetus was, but. At some point, George wanted to air it, and he said, you make the call on it, and look, if at any point you change your mind, we won't air it. And it came down to the day where George wants to put it on the 5 o'clock news. He said, hey, this is important stuff. People have to know about it. And I thought it was too. I thought it's kind of a crime. I know you got to keep the technology secret, but you can't not tell everybody that this stuff is going on, that we have, actual hardware from another civilization. It's a big fucking deal, probably the biggest one there ever was. And George said, today's the day we got to put it on the news or something to that effect. And when it came right down to the time to air it, I changed my mind and I said, we're not doing it. And that's what turned into the famous wrestling match between me and George trying to get the tape, but he won because he was a bigger guy.
So you actually physically wrestled?
Well, I think it was more of a pulling match. I don't think we ever hit the ground, but he got the tape, he put it in the player, and boom, 5 o'clock news was on. And then I got a call after that, and they said, it was from Dennis. He said, do you have any idea what we're going to do to you now? And he hung up the phone. That was the last communication I had with him.
And what has happened to you since then?
After that, a lot of people I've known either were audited by the IRS, anybody I know that had clearances that worked in secure programs, had the clearances pulled. One of them, one of mine that Jeremy knows.
He's going on camera with me soon. He'll tell the story now that he's out of work up there.
He was working up at the Tonopah Test Range, waiting for his clearance to come through, and they pulled that. It became, it's like if they can't get the person that's involved, they just create a problem for everybody that surrounds them. And so, I mean, the way it turns out, it hurt a lot of people's lives that I was connected to. And that's an effective way of shutting someone up. So
did you feel that by coming forward and going public, they couldn't just snuff you out?
That's what I was told, and George and everybody, said that. It's public. There's, no one will touch you. And I fell for it. And I
Folks, if you haven't gone over to baldbrad.com and get yourself a mug, you got to go get one. I'm telling you. You're going to feel better. We drink coffee every time we do a show. Supernatural Saturdays, cover the White House press briefings. You got an American flag on the back, folks. I've scrubbed this thing. It ain't coming off. We also sell t-shirts, awesome patriotic t-shirts. We got a book, Trojan Horse, How the Left is Destroying America. Go over, support a fellow conservative, a fellow patriot, heck, a fellow enthusiast of the paranormal, the unexplained, and the supernatural. Let's continue.
Do you wish you didn't?
Yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes when it's just overstressed and people are camping on your lawn.
Yeah, but this is going to make things worse doing this.
No, this is going to make things better.
That's what I was trying to tell him.
How is this going to make things better?
Well, because you're getting a real chance to explain yourself in a way that's going to make people who not only work in the government, people that are police officers and firefighters and first responders and doctors and scientists, they're going to empathize and empathize with what it must be like to be a person like you in your 20s who gets thrust into this world unknowingly and confronted with one of the most, if not the most, important discovery in the history of human beings. The big question, are we alone? It's the number one question. There's
Right.
two questions, right?
Let me know in the comment section. Do you guys think we're alone? I mean, mathematically, I would have to say no, we are not alone. Now, that doesn't mean that somebody's or some civilization or ET's able to travel here, but I think based on all the suns that we can capture from the James Webb telescope to Hubble that we had for a long time, I mean, the amount of galaxies that we capture and the billions and trillions of stars that are out there, I mean, just mathematically, I feel like there has to be some sort of other life form out there and that we're not the only ones. And that's just the one dimension that we have. There's kind of that idea that there's different bubbles. So this would be our universe. And then there's another bubble outside of that that's a whole nother universe that has another trillions upon trillions of stars. So, I mean, you could actually have an interdimensionary species or civilization that actually can hop from one bubble to another and travel. So you got some sort of crazy stuff that could come out here, I think, in my lifetime with the use of AI filling in those missing gaps, whether it's with the mathematics or whatever it may be, finding a different energy source to prove all this stuff. We'll have to find out.
What happens when we die, and are we alone? Those are the two big questions.
Right.
And if we're not alone, and someone knows we're not alone, and these some people who know we're not alone are these bungling sort of
Even if they
military
weren't,
folks.
it's a crime that
Yes.
they're not telling the
Yes.
rest of us.
But I mean, I don't mean bungling in terms of they're incompetent. I mean, they can't be competent. It seems to me, to what you're describing, that no one can be competent with this technology. Like the Victorian era scholars analyzing some sort of a nuclear reactor. There's no way.
Why do you
It's
think
beyond us.
Why do you think they're not telling us? Let's just make an assumption that this is true right now. Why do you think that they're not telling us, that our government doesn't tell us? What's your best
Well,
thought?
let me put it into what you do. If I'm the president, okay, and I get this information, what do I do with this? What do I do with this? There's something that we don't know. There's something we don't understand. There's something that came from another world. We got it tucked away in the mountains. And just wanted you guys to know about it. Hey, sleep tight. Hey, American Idol's on tonight. Who do you think's going to win?
Yeah.
Who's going to win America's
no,
Got
that's
Talent?
not gonna happen.
Da, 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 da,
So
da, 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 da.
one is uncertainty, and the other one is what Bob and I have talked about a lot. Absolutely not knowing what to tell people because you don't really understand it yourself, even though
Right.
you've got
What
these.
do you say? If you want to run a government, you want to get people to pay their taxes.
But there's something else.
Yeah. What do you say?
So you have these objects flying with impunity, right? But you have something else.
Well, not only that, what can you say? Like, how much do you really know?
I think it's
Exactly.
mainly the technology. They
That's-
just want to keep the technology secret because
Military.
if there's
Whoever
Yeah.
gets this
there's
wins, dude.
Yeah,
They win.
you
Right.
control the world. You literally become invincible once you master the technology. You cannot penetrate a field like that. So imagine I know it's all science fiction, but science fiction turns into science fact. If you have real force fields around aircraft and battleships, you win. You win. You can
Right.
force your will upon anybody. And like I said, there's so much more to the story. When I was first there were Russian scientists at S4. This was early on in the project.
So this was before Operation Paperclip became public as well, right? So
I would imagine.
that was
I don't know what the dates
Yeah,
were.
when was that?
when did that was that
Recent. 98, I think.
98?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know the dates on it.
So it's roughly 10 years later, Operation Paperclip becomes Freedom of Information Act.
We're talking about Russia, not Germany. He's talking about Russian scientists.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, Russian scientists, a lot of them came from Germany. A lot of those rocket scientists that work with NASA, they all came from Nazi scientists.
Got it.
So some Russians got some of them.
I
we
just
got
know
some of them.
at some point there was intense
collaboration
cooperation
with
I mean,
Russia.
even exchanging some ideas on nuclear weapons and EMP tests and stuff like things we would never have discussed with them. But at the same time, it was in the late '80s. They were involved and actually in the area at S4 with us.
So
And
you got to communicate with these guys, or you saw them?
no, I knew they were there. Barry would talk about the commies that were there.
The commies?
Yeah, the commies. And
That was back when they were the commies. Right? It was the Cold
they
War.
were real commies.
Isn't that interesting?
I mean, I would imagine that his coworker, supervisor Barry, would have said the word Russian because there was even communist Americans. There is Americans. I mean, we even see them today, right? Not to get political, because Supernatural Saturdays isn't supposed to be about politics. It's supposed to be about the unexplained, the paranormal, and the supernatural. But there was communists that were Americans, that were scientists, that were just regular blue-collar workers, white-collar workers. So we'll see if he says that Barry actually said they were Russians, because, again, you can have communists that weren't Russian, that were Americans working at S4.
And at some point, it wasn't our group, but at some point, there was a big discovery made. And this did not happen when I was there. It happened in between my trips to there. And after that, apparently they decided it was just too cool to share with anybody, and the Russians were never allowed back on the base after that.
But you don't know what that discovery was?
No. Like I said, it wasn't my group. So one of the other groups really found out something. But in typical American fashion, it was, all right, this is ours. You guys get the hell out of here.
Was there any inkling that any other government had something similar?
No, nothing that I had heard.
See, that was the thing that always freaked me out, was why, if something was so superior to human beings, it's almost like visiting an ant colony. Like, why would you go to the queen? I don't give a fuck who the queen is. I'm a human. I'm so superior to you ants. I don't care who you have running your hive. I'm just going to study it.
I think it's who got it.
Who got it?
Look at the, rocket technology in Germany.
But they got 9 of them?
Yeah, that doesn't make sense to me either. So they were either in the same area, or, one had clues to where others were. I mean, I don't know. You have to fill that in there, but you're right. I mean, 9 of them, that's a big dig if it was archaeological.
Well, one of the more recent sightings and these discussions that have been coming out recently from Air Force pilots and Navy pilots, they've been talking about things happening in the ocean, and that something literally goes into the water, or something maybe below the surface of the water. You're thinking about the 2004
Tic Tac Nimitz case. So that's when George Knapp and I broke on the radio twice before the New York Times, so I know this one really well. Commander Fravor and those pilots. There was a disturbance on the surface of the water. Commander Fravor visually saw what looked like similar to a cross, some object. So it's like as if you have some coral under the water and it's breaking over.
Right.
The Tic Tac is doing this crazy maneuver that defies. It's a gravity-propelled system.
They saw it in the sky before they saw it in the water, right?
Yeah, so there were radar that was picking these things coming down from 80,000 feet and dropping to 50 feet in less than a second.
This is it, Jamie? What is this?
Dude, this is actually on the news today. There was a briefing.
So a lot of people get this confused.
Oh, not this one then either?
No, so that is called the gimbal. So there's 3 videos released by the Pentagon that are all actual.
Just play and keep the volume off.
Okay.
I would really just pay attention to the source videos. So you've got the Tic Tac, which is this object that Commander Fravor saw. Another pilot filmed it with a FLIR pod, and it goes. But this one you see is really important to Bob's story. The gimbal craft. It's been recently analyzed. It's FLIR. Not only does it's definitive that it's not conventional anything by its movements, but there's a pocket of cold air around a propulsion source. So this object, by the way, sat stationary for days, if not weeks. It sat stationary.
Yeah, they found it 11 hours later, and they were saying there's no way this thing, using that kind of energy to go that fast, could just hover for
the amount of
11
time.
hours.
And by the way, you're seeing a very small part of what happened that day. This object was not alone. And so hopefully that information comes out, and we can, I wish we had video of it. I'm sure we'd all want to see it.
There's a video of this stuff. Look, if this is happening every week off the West Coast and East Coast, you got this video, which, by the way, the video that we all see on the internet with the gimbal and the infrared and flare, like, that's not even the 4K stuff. That's like the 480p. The military has the HD version of this stuff, and they have different angles, and they have different camera sightings of it, meaning not just infrared, but actual just the optics of it. Color, everything. So let's not be fooled here of, well, we only have one little thing that was leaked. No, there's a lot of images. There's a lot of video of this stuff, especially if something's hovering 11 plus hours. You don't think we didn't engage with it at all? So, like, I'm telling you, there's a lot of information that hasn't come out yet.
But that's called the gimbal. That was East Coast, right? 2015. West Coast, 2004, was the Tic Tac. The disturbance on the water, Commander Fravor believes there was something under that water that was causing that disturbance when the Tic Tac was coming around and doing it. Inside the people that are studying this, they're thinking maybe the Tic Tac system was causing the disturbance, But the USO, unidentified submerged object, that he visually saw, the whole interesting thing about that is, I would love Bob to describe it, is why it doesn't matter if these craft are in space, air, or water. Why doesn't it matter? I love when he talks about this shit.
All right, we'll have to continue with a part 4 here of Bob Lazar's story about UAPs, UFOs, and aliens. We're going to see more of Commander Fravor's story here, gravitational propulsion, anti-gravity, all sorts of stuff. We'll end it off with a part 4, folks. As always, hit that like and subscribe button. Head over to part 4 if it's uploaded. We'll probably have it set up for you next week, or heck, maybe it already is next week when you're watching this. Again, hit that like and subscribe button. Head over to baldbrad.com, buy our book on Amazon, Trojan Horse, How the Left is Destroying America. And folks, I will see you next week here, Bald Brad Show.